30 minutes, we invite you to be part of the conversation by calling 219-362-0522. And you can now text your questions to the Liquor Vault on-air line or by email to soundoff@967theeagle.com. This is a topic-based program, and we ask that you keep your comments brief, concise, and related to the topic being discussed. The views expressed on Sound Off are those of the host or callers and do not represent the opinion of 96.7 The Eagle, Spoon River Media LLC, or the sponsors. The Liquor Vault on-air line is now open for your calls or texts at 219-362-0522. This is Sound Off on 96.7 The Eagle.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Sound Off. My name is Nate Laux, and you're listening to WCOE 96.7 The Eagle here in LaPorte County. Today on the Sound Off radio show is Dr. Micah Pollak. Dr. Pollak is the director of the Center for Economic Education and Research and an associate professor of economics at Indiana University Northwest. We're going to have a conversation on the region economy here in Northwest Indiana and what's happening here, but also what's happening, federally, these kind of things. If you have a question for Dr. Pollak, call or text me, 219-362-0522. It comes right to the studio. You can email me at soundoff@967theeagle.com or let me know on the comments if you're streaming with us here on Facebook or YouTube as well. Dr. Micah, how are you, friend?
Hi, Nate. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good. Are you enjoying your summer? Do you get some time off at least?
I do. I'm actually not teaching over the summer for the first time in over a decade. So I get to do a little bit of gardening and spend some time outdoors and with the kids. And it's been fantastic so far, although a little bit hot lately.
Yeah, exactly. So, for our listeners that might not know, or they hear economist, it can mean a lot of different things. So for our listeners that might not know, define what an economist does.
Sure. And so maybe I can start by defining what economics is.
Sure.
And we talk about this in my economics class all the time. It's usually the first day that we talk about this. I ask, what is economics? And most people say, oh, it's the stock market or banking or finance or investment. And, those things kind of come in here and there. But at its fundamental level, it's really just understanding how we make decisions as individuals and then how those individual decisions kind of get rolled up into a giant snowball and cause decisions to happen at the state, at the local level, at the national level. How we decide what to buy and what to produce and how much to charge. And in the end, it just kind of boils down to understanding how we make decisions as individuals. And I think when you phrase it that way, you realize that it's not about the stock market or money or anything like that. It's really just understanding how people behave.
So it is almost a sociological thing as well, because again, you're trying to make sense of human behaviors and how they use currency, how they use money and everything. And it's a fascinating study. And I sometimes laugh and I balk a little bit at people that throw some shade at economists, not realizing how complicated people are as well. So I want to talk a little bit about where the economy is going. I do scroll Twitter sometimes as, I look at different things, different indicators. A recent YouGov.com poll suggests that 25% of Americans think that we're currently in a recession, worse than 2008. So like that, not that it's coming, but we're currently in it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we definitely are not in a recession at all, and certainly not one close to as bad as 2008. I think a lot of the misunderstanding, just like maybe people misunderstand what economists study, has to do with a misunderstanding of what the economy is and how we measure it. So the average person might look around and see record inflation, record gas prices, the stock market tumbling, maybe a lot of hand-wringing and pessimism on local news channels, and think that, okay, well, that must mean that we're in a recession. And that's not really the case. I mean, we look at the economy and the recession using other metrics like the unemployment rate, labor force participation, economic output. And if you look at all those measures, the economy is actually doing quite well. And, in 2021, we had a fantastic year. GDP grew at 5.5% after you account for inflation. Which is well above kind of the long run average of 3 to 3.5% that we usually get per year or lower. So 2001 was a fantastic year. Going to 2002, it's still very early, but there doesn't seem to be any sign of unemployment picking up. And so I think that maybe you're just maybe the average person is just kind of hearing, stuff around them and not really looking at the numbers. When we look at the numbers, the economy is actually doing quite well now. I mean, we still have our challenges, but we're in a good place economically.
So as somebody then that looks at the economy and studies it as you do and can maybe have their pulse a little bit closer to it, what are some of those indicators that are concerning to you?
I mean, inflation is the big one that you're going to get a lot of people talking about and concerned about, and they should be concerned. I mean, we've had record levels of inflation, 8-9% inflation, the highest in 30, 40 years or so, and so that is a real concern. At the same time, if we have this inflation, but our fundamentals are strong, we don't have a lot of unemployment, our economic output is growing, even when you adjust for that inflation, then maybe you don't need to be quite as worried about that. But it is something that we need to deal with. And, the Federal Reserve has taken very aggressive steps at reducing inflation by raising interest rates. So I think we're going to see a lot of disruption in the housing market and other markets where typically consumers borrow a lot of money, buying cars and the like, in the coming 6 months or year. But what the Federal Reserve is trying to do is to kind of cool things off a little bit. So we're almost in the opposite problem. We're not in a recession. Things are almost too good and we're going too fast and there's too much money circulating too fast in our economy. And by raising interest rates, you're going to try to slow that down, put your foot on the brake a little bit. And so I think that the Federal Reserve has taken steps already to make that happen. And we'll probably start seeing the impact of that coming in the next, 3 to 6 to 9 months or so.
That's interesting. So do you think, again, this is a hotly debated topic, I know, with interest rates, would you favor or would you think it'd be wise for them to raise the interest rate a couple more points?
Well, I think it would have been wise to have raised the interest rate probably a year ago, maybe a little bit longer ago even. There were signs that this was coming a long time ago, and everyone said, well, let's not take our foot off the gas yet because we're not out of this, recession caused by the pandemic. But, you want to take your foot off the gas before you get to the wall, not right when you get to the wall. And so I think that, the right time to raise interest rates probably was a lot earlier. Given that we're doing it now, it's hard to gauge how high we need to go. And I think the Federal Reserve is kind of erring on the side of, well, let's be a little bit over aggressive because we kind of dropped the ball a little bit earlier on. I think it's debatable whether they should continue raising interest rates or not right now. I think probably not, given all the other issues that are going on with like supply chain, and supply chain challenges nationally and internationally. And it might be a little bit more wise. I mean, I'm not going to contradict them. They have excellent economists that work there. But, I think it might be better to take a little bit more of a wait and see and see how the latest kind of rise plays out.
I was really hoping for that sound clip that I could just get you, disagree with all the... I mean,
one thing to put it in perspective is that interest rates are still at record low levels. I mean, if you look at, for example, like mortgage rates, right? The 30-year, if you want to get a 30-year fixed interest mortgage, right now the interest rate's about 5 to 6% or so. And before 2008, before the housing market crisis, it had never been below 5%. Mm-hmm. And so since 2008, we've been cruising at like sub 5%, 2%, 3%, or even lower interest rates for like 30-year mortgages. And now we're up to 5%. It feels really high, but historically we're still at record low interest rates. And so, we've just spent so much time at these low interest rates, they feel normal. But that's the effect of, keeping your foot on the gas and making money easy and accessible with low interest rates. And so I think that, some of this is sticker shock, but it's sticker shock getting back to kind of before the housing market crisis and all the economic stimulus that happened after that.
Yeah, we certainly have a short-term memory on so much of this stuff. On the show today, we've got Dr. Micah Pollak. Dr. Pollak is the director of the Center for Economic Education and Research and an associate professor of economics at Indiana University Northwest. Again, if you have a question for Dr. Pollak, you can call or text 219-362-0522. Email me at soundoff@967theeagle.com or let us know in the comments. We're going to take our first break, and we're going to be right back here on Sound Off, only on 96.7 The Eagle.
For over 50 years, LaPorte has trusted Cannon's Automotive Service for prompt, efficient, same-day service. And that same Cannon's commitment extends to area businesses who rely on a fleet of one or many to take your goods or service to the customer. Whether it's the truck or trailer that needs maintained or fixed, trust Cannon's Automotive to maximize your productivity with same-day service. Now with 2 Cannon's locations, 710 Tyler Street and 909 Boyd Boulevard.
With Cannon's Automotive, we fix everything.
My name is Bill McQueen, and I own Perry Acoustics, a construction company here in the great state of Indiana. Each year, some construction companies misclassify their employees as independent contractors and illegally pay them cash under the table. That puts companies like mine that pay a good living wage and employee benefits at a major competitive disadvantage. These companies rob our state of over $400 million a year. Imagine what could be done for Hoosiers with that money.
Visit indianacip.com/tax fraud to learn how together we can tell them to stop stealing from Hoosiers.
There's a lot of variety on the radio and at Domino's too. From pizzas and sandwiches to salads and pasta. Get a taste of variety when you place your order at your local Domino's in LaPorte or Michigan City. Order online, through the app, or call into your local Domino's store. And now with Domino's new Carside Delivery, you can stay in your car when you place your carryout order online at Domino's.com, and they'll carry your order to your car contact-free. Look for the 50% off Carside Delivery deals at Domino's.com. Join 96.7 The Eagle every Sunday morning from 9 to 9:30 a.m. for Bethany Church's Sound Up. Enlighten your Sunday morning with inspirational words of faith from Pastor Dennis Meyer. Bethany Church's Sound Up every Sunday morning from 9 to 9:30 a.m. on 96.7 The Eagle. Let's look at the forecast at 96.7 The Eagle, brought to you by the Pink Sheep Children's Boutique.
The charming and affordable Pink Sheep Children's Boutique has so many fun themes and styles for boys, girls, and moms. Come see for yourself. The Pink Sheep Children's Boutique, 604 Lincoln Way in downtown LaPorte.
Michiana weather.
Chance for scattered thunderstorms this afternoon. Otherwise cloudy. High of 83. Northwest winds 8 to 15 miles per hour. Mainly clear tonight. Lows dip down to about 61. From the Weather Center at HometownNewsNow.com. Right now, 80.
We're waiting to hear from you. Dial or text 362-0522 and let us know what you think. That's 362-0522. Back to Sound Off on 96.7 The Eagle.
Welcome back, my friends. Today on the Sound Off Radio Show is Dr. Micah Pollak. Dr. Pollak is the director of the Center for Economic Education and Research and an associate professor of economics at Indiana University Northwest. If you have a question for Dr. Pollak, call or text me at 219-362-0522. Email me at soundoff@967theeagle.com or let us know in the comments. Let's get to a caller question real quick. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. Thanks for calling in. What's your question for Dr. Pollak?
Yes, thank you for coming on today, Mr. Pollak. As someone who grew up in the 70s and started my agricultural career in the 80s after high school, I see eerily similar things happening now with general economy and the ag economy. We have rising interest rates, inflated land values, inflated values of almost every product made in America. Inflation is coming on strong. Do you see any similarities that we could go into a major recession, maybe even perhaps a depression worldwide, with, especially since every nation in the world is printing worthless money to cause stimulus to keep their nations afloat? Thank you.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities. If you look at, like the caller mentioned, some of these trends in terms of inflation and interest rates, it's too soon to say whether this is, the beginning of something that might reflect a recession or even maybe a depression. Personally, I don't think it is, because here you can point to a lot of very kind of unique one-time things that are happening that are driving up prices and driving up interest rates. So it's not necessarily a systemic, economy-wide underlying problem. We have a lot of kind of one-time things happening all together at the wrong moment. And that could snowball into something worse, but I don't suspect it will, especially because, you have those interest rates going up for a reason. They're going up to fight the rise in prices. And we have these supply chain disruptions that are driving up prices. And we have this massive readjustment going on in the labor market that's driving up the cost of labor. And, if we couldn't point to these individual things, then I think I would be very concerned if we were seeing this happening and we didn't have a good explanation. But I think there's very clear reasons why we see prices going up and why we have inflation and why we need to raise interest rates and why interest rates are going up. And for that reason, I think we have a much better control over the situation than maybe we did in the 70s. And that being said, I don't have a crystal ball, and 6 months or a year from now, I could be completely wrong, but I don't think that there's the same kind of alarm that we need to have now compared to maybe what we might have had in the 1970s.
Thanks so much for answering that. We do have one more caller. Go ahead. Let's put them through. What's your question for Dr. Pollak?
Yeah, do you think it's, Doctor, it's possible that business and the stock market, et cetera, cannot be in a recession. But your average person in the United States, the average working person, could possibly be going through a recession.
Yeah, good question. So there does seem to be a kind of this separation, right, between what we consider a recession, but there's so many people that feel the consequences of inflation at the pump or at the, I was just doing a grant ask for our nonprofit that we run, and food costs are up about 14% for us. And so, how do you kind of balance both of those truths that maybe we're not in a recession, but people are feeling pain as well?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. I absolutely think that you can have separation like that. And I think that's why it's important to realize that just talking about the stock market is not the same thing as talking about the economy as a whole. You need to talk a little bit more about, okay, there's the stock market, then there's inflation, then there's unemployment, then there's economic output, then there's manufacturing, and there's agriculture. And all of these things generally kind of move together, but they don't always move together, and they can absolutely move in opposite directions. I think, before the pandemic, we were probably in a situation where things looked really good on paper. The stock market was rising, but but real income for the average American was falling. And now we're almost in the reverse situation where we see a lot of, high prices and the stock market falling. But if you actually look at real income has actually risen, in the last few years, adjusting for inflation for the average household, and especially for the middle or lower income households. And that doesn't mean that it's better for everyone in those groups, but for, on average, for most of those people, things are actually improving despite, the high rates of inflation. I mean, if you adjust wages for inflation, in the last 2 years, real wages have actually risen almost 3%. So even though we've seen these massive, 8-9% inflation rates, real wages on average are rising faster than that. We're seeing 10-12% rises in wage as a result. And I think the caller makes a really good point that, don't be too quick just to point out one thing and say, well, that's the economy, it's the stock market. And so whatever the stock market's doing, that's what I'm going to interpret as the economy. It's, there's a lot of different aspects to the economy, and they can sometimes go to the same direction and sometimes they go in opposite directions. And so we need to be aware of that, before we jump to conclusions about what's happening to our economy.
And it's the hard thing about political rhetoric, right, is typically politicians want to connect to data points that strengthen their case and forget data points that might not strengthen their case. And so this is certainly done in the economy, where we might talk about low unemployment or high unemployment, depending on which party or which, case you're trying to make, and forget about stock market or vice versa, or, inflationary indicators. And so it is an interesting thing, and the economy is so much more robust and difficult, I'm sure, than most of us want to give it credit for. We've got Dr. Micah Pollak on the show today. Dr. Pollak is the director of the Center for Economic Education and Research and an associate professor of economics at Indiana University Northwest. If you have a question for Dr. Pollak, call or text 219-362-0522, or you can email me at soundoff@967theeagle.com, or let me know in the comments if you're streaming with us as well. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about, you've done some fantastic, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for all the work during COVID-19 you did to track, spread and things like this. I mean, I think that's when I started following you on Twitter, was during all of that. You did such great work. Now, I'm sure you're probably also thinking about broader COVID-19 things, right? How is COVID-19 impacting our economy, not in just the short term, but how does it impact us during the long term? Is there anything economists are discovering now about what could potentially happen in the long term from the pandemic we are going through and just went through the last two years?
Yeah, so it's been a fascinating time to be an economist. And yes, I did start out doing a lot of data analysis on COVID-19. And the best reward I can get from that is that hopefully we're at a point where I can stop doing that, because it won't matter anymore, hopefully. We'll see if that happens. But I think that one of the fascinating things that's happening now is that during the pandemic and after the pandemic, in 2021 or so, when we saw this resurgence, this economic growth come back, it looked very different than almost all the recessions and the periods of economic growth that have happened going all the way back to the Great Depression, because there was a humongous shift in the labor market. And I think the changes that happened in the labor market during the pandemic and after the pandemic are going to be long-term changes that are probably going to shift our entire economy down the road. And what I'm talking about is some people call it the Great Resignation, or I like to call it the Great Reassessment of labor. And what happened was during the pandemic, people were locked down for a while, and people weren't able to work and got laid off. And for whatever reason, it caused a lot of people to reassess their situation, their economic situation, their job, whether they wanted to do their job, whether it was worth their time, how much childcare costs, and all these things. And a lot of people realized that they wanted to change what they were doing. Just as an example, someone who may have gotten laid off and suddenly now isn't able to, their kids aren't able to go to childcare, and so they're forced to stay home with their kids and take care of them instead, may suddenly realize that, hey, all the money I was making working was just going to pay for childcare. I could just not work and be home with my kids. And actually, for my family, my household, that's a net gain, and we're better off because of that. Or workers are saying, I don't want to go into risky situations talking to customers face to face where they might, get belligerent if I ask them to wear a mask or something like that. And so I'm just not going to work in food service anymore. And so a lot of workers kind of reassessed their goal for work, the type of work they wanted to do, where they wanted to work. And during the pandemic, there was a lot of pushback from businesses. You may have heard people saying, well, nobody wants to work anymore, things like that. They can't find workers. But there's been a real shift in the type of jobs workers want to do, and the type of compensation and what they're looking for in a job. And I don't think those changes are going to go away. I think that people kind of had their nose to the grindstone and hadn't really thought about what was next, and just kind of took the next step, and they never really taken a step back. And now that they've realized, okay, I'm going to reassess where my life is going, the type of employment career I want, and I'm going to direct it towards the direction that I want it to go in, rather than just kind of getting by day to day. And we're seeing big shifts in the type of jobs as a result of that, and in how you attract and keep workers as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it also, obviously, working through a pandemic or navigating through the economic implications of a pandemic are hard enough itself, but it seemed to almost open up this existential shift in many people, like you said, about their careers, about different things, or even potentially about a retirement that they weren't necessarily planning on doing right away, but they decided to go ahead and do. And so many different things that have happened. It's going to be interesting to follow that over the next couple of years as more data comes out. We've got Dr. Micah Pollak on the show. If you've got a question for him, 219-362-0522. We're talking about the economy. Dr. Pollak is an economist with IU Northwest. Again, 219-362-0522. We got a couple questions. Let's get to one before our next break. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. Thanks for calling. What's your question for Dr. Pollak?
Yes, Dr. Pollak. I already heard your disclaimer about not having a crystal ball. So let me just ask you, in your personal opinion, since the Federal Reserve has raised their interest rate, do you think it's possible that the banks will start paying a little better on basic savings accounts and traditional IRAs, things of this nature? Just again, I realize that you don't have the crystal ball, but if just in your personal opinion, do you think that's a possibility? And I thank you for your time. I'll hang up and listen to what you say. Thank you, Nate.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for the question. I think I can hazard to say a little bit more than needing a crystal ball. Almost certainly, yeah, we should see interest rates rising on everything. And, this means that, if you're buying a house, that's bad news for you. But if you're, sticking money in a savings account or some kind of money market account or something, you will see interest rates rise. They move together, not perfectly, not all the time, but in general strokes, they move together. And as interest rates rise, for mortgages and for other types of investments and purchases, we'll see interest rates rise for savings accounts as well. So, for quite a while now, we've had, savings accounts have effectively had zero interest rate or something really tiny. I expect we'll start to see those things going up. And I think I can be more confident about that. I don't think I need a crystal ball for that. You can go back and graph, different types of interest rates, and they all move in the same direction together. So yeah, you should see those interest rates going up, which is, if you're looking for somewhere to stick your money short term and maybe get a little return, that's good news.
Not Bitcoin, right? I mean, not Bitcoin.
Yeah, I need a really hazy crystal ball for that.
All right, we've got Dr. Micah Pollak on the show. We're going to take our final break of the day, and we're going to come back here on 96.7 The Eagle. If you've got a question, again, you're welcome to call or text me here at 219-362-0522. You're also welcome to email me at soundoff@967theeagle.com. We're going to take a couple minute break here so we can pay our lighting bill. Keep listening to 96.7 The Eagle.
Ben Conowitz here, owner of LaPorte Seamless Gutter. My parents started LaPorte Seamless Gutter in 1982 with one goal in mind, really. Our customers' 100% satisfaction. And we are still providing the same customer service that Tim and Seal Conowitz started all those years ago. Give us a call today for a free estimate at 219-362-9972, or you can visit us on the web, www.lpseamless.com. 219-362-9972.
Nothing says spring better than a visit to Small's Garden Center in Stoneyard. Small's has the area's largest selection of plants, trees, shrubs, evergreens, perennials, and it's all 30% off now at Small's. And choose from over 60 varieties of fruit trees, raspberry and blueberry bushes. 30% off. Want someone else to do the work for you? No problem. Simply ask Small's to deliver and plant your purchase. It's all at Small's Garden Center in Stoneyard.
When it's time to make improvements on your outdoor space, think Small's Garden Center in Stoneyard. At Small's, you'll find a huge selection of decorative stones, wash stone, limestone, slag, flagstone, pavers, and boulders. Plus, Small's will load or deliver it for you. And right now at Small's, all topsoil and mulch is on sale. Call or stop by for prices. Shop Small's new selection of outdoor products for outdoor living, patio and garden area, and save on outdoor decor items. Now 30% off at Small's. Small's Garden Center in Stoneyard, US 20 in LaPorte, open Monday through Saturday, 8 until 5, and Sunday, 10 until 4.
Good news, Surf Fiber Internet is growing in LaPorte. Get 1 gig speed with a free whole home Wi-Fi router for only $65 a month. There's no hidden fees, no contracts, and free installation. They are building out more neighborhoods every day. So visit surffiber.com to check your address for service or call 844-955-SURF for more details. That's 844-955-SURF. This is a limited time offer. Speeds may vary and some restrictions apply.
Dave, you guys built a new deck.
Oh yeah, it was easy.
It's on a bit of a slant, but I can live with that.
Yeah, you think? I thought it looked pretty good.
I don't think that railing's up to code either. So, are we just going to stand here, or can we actually go on it?
Oh no, I don't trust it enough to actually go on it.
No offense to Dave, but if you want the job done right, contact Powerhouse Construction in LaPorte. Decks, patios, or kitchen and bath remodels, Powerhouse Construction will ensure your satisfaction. Call 219-380-9981 to book a free estimate. That's 219-380-9981. Powerhouse Construction.
Fireworks, get your fireworks here. Atomic Fireworks is back in town on Pine Lake Avenue across from the new Dollar General. Oh yeah! Atomic Fireworks has them all, big and small, and loud too. Atomic Fireworks has kid assortments, fountains, firecrackers, rockets, Roman candles, and much, much more. Oh yeah! Fireworks! Fireworks! We got the best deal on fireworks at Atomic Fireworks on Pine Lake Avenue across from the new Dollar General. Don't wait until the last minute. Stop by Atomic Fireworks today. LaPorte owned and operated. Looking for a hard-to-find item you can't find in the stores? Maybe you'd like to sell a few items you no longer use or need. Maybe you're looking for help around the house or yard. Tradio is the answer. Every weekday following your 9 a.m. news, join Joe Happel and Jeff Wugazer for Tradio on 96.7 The Eagle. It's your time to call the Liquor Vault on-air lines at 362-0522 to buy, sell, and trade just about anything, even those hard-to-find items. Tradio, brought to you by Sowers Buick GMC and by Lighthouse Estate Management. Join us for Tradio, weekdays from 9:06 a.m. until 10 on 96.7 The Eagle.
Your opinion matters. We invite you to share it by calling or texting the Liquor Vault on-air line at 362-0522. That's 362-0522. Now, back to Sound Off on 96.7 The Eagle.
Welcome back, friends, to our final segment of Sound Off today. I want to thank again our guest who's been here answering questions, Dr. Micah Pollak. He's the director of the Center for Economic Education and Research and associate professor of economics at Indiana University Northwest. We've got a couple minutes left on the show. If you've got a question, 219-362-0522. You can call or text me or email me at soundoff@967theeagle.com. If you've got a question about the economy that you'd like to know, we are here for you. More Dr. Micah than me, but I will get you through to him. So let's get to a caller. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. Thanks for calling. What's your question for Dr. Pollak?
Yeah, I apologize for calling a second time, but he made a statement that really struck a nerve with me concerning employees and employers who employees have learned that they can set their own standards, work from home, or decide, pick and choose whatever they want to do, or quite simply not have a job. That led to the Mexican immigration in agriculture and higher wages lead to higher cost of living and higher standards, higher inflation. What are those people going to do if they can't find what they want to do at compensation they want? And then what are these businesses supposed to do that cannot accommodate their schedules or their work from home policies or what? Thank you.
Thanks. Did you get that question, Dr. Pollak?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. That's like the next step, right? I mean, first, I'd say that workers are finding these jobs, and it's not so much that they can't find work that they want to do. It's just that what the type of work they're doing is shifting. I can give you an example. Maybe before the pandemic, someone worked at a fast food restaurant, and that was their full-time job. And then during the pandemic, maybe the fast food restaurant closed or reduced hours, and they started driving for one of the grocery delivery services or food delivery services. And the wages and the benefits are not great there, but they are potentially comparable with maybe working in fast food. And maybe they found that, hey, I can set my own hours, I can work in the evenings, I can work as much or as little as I want just by signing in the app. And I don't think that there's necessarily a shortage of workers. It's just we're seeing them shift from one group of jobs towards another, and there is a very real problem for businesses that are trying to attract workers. And I think that what the business has to do is realize, first of all, that this is happening, and it's not something they're powerless against, but they need to figure out, okay, well, how do I get my workers to come back to me? And a lot of them are just trying to throw more money at the problem and say, well, we'll pay you a few more dollars an hour or something like that. But that's kind of missing the point. I mean, they're moving because, like you said, they are interested in work from home possibilities, more flexible schedules. And for some industries, that might be something that they could look into. I think that the businesses that you hear complaining the loudest about nobody wants to work anymore, I can't find workers, are the ones that aren't willing to look into those types of possibilities. I've been thinking a lot lately, comparing this to maybe with the rise of the internet, in the early 2000s or late 90s, and a lot of businesses just didn't want to have anything to do with it, and they just said, I'm not going to have a website, I don't want to deal with that. And they could do that, but then as it became more and more widespread and more common, these businesses really struggled. And so I don't think that it's necessarily impossible, even necessarily hard for businesses to adapt to this, but they have to realize that it's something they have to change. And I think that a lot of businesses just went back to, well, we're going to offer the same job we did before the pandemic, and we expect workers to show up and take the job, and that's not going to work anymore. The new job that they come up with and the way that they redo it, maybe it's relying less on labor, more automation, something like that, is going to look different. But I absolutely still think it's possible, and I don't think we're going to see massive labor shortages. We're just seeing a shift in the type of jobs people want to do, and the businesses that have responded and kind of adjusted their jobs accordingly are doing fine. They have plenty of workers. They have workers lined up, and they have plenty of applicants. It's the ones that maybe are just heads in the sand, refusing to acknowledge that things are changing and aren't adapting, that I think are what you're seeing is really struggling the most.
What's interesting about that anecdotally is I've got a friend that was a teacher, and during the pandemic, the state offered essentially a $10,000 grant for somebody that wanted to go back and get a different certification or education. And they did computer programming, and they have now left education, and they work from home for a company in San Francisco, making more than twice as much as they made in education. And so it's a different life for them, right? It's a better life for them. And so all of these things are shifting, as you said, and that's just one example, but it'll be interesting to see what happens and how employers have to negotiate those evolutions as well.
Yeah, and in the case of education, like you said, just having the job posted again in the same way it was before, you're not necessarily going to fill it. You have to rise to meet the challenge of the changing environment, and that doesn't mean that you can't hire workers. It's just going to take a little bit of creativity and innovation rather than just doing the same thing you've always done before.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Dr. Micah Pollak on the show. Dr. Pollak is the director of the Center for Economic Education and Research and associate professor of economics at IU North. West here. Hey, Lake, Port, or LaPorte County, we're all here in the region in Northwest Indiana. So much of our economies are tied to Chicago. I want to talk about a couple things here. Boeing and CAT and Citadel have all announced that they're leaving Chicago. Do you think that this is a sign of things to come for corporations relocating away from the city? Do you think this will ultimately benefit Indiana, which is obviously a lower tax state, or hurt the region with the loss of corporations that some region residents may be employed?
Okay, so I think it is a trend that is going to continue. And again, it ties back to this great reassessment of labor. I mean, when employees started saying, hey, I want to work from home if I can, And the companies that said, okay, we'll make that work, they began to realize, hey, we don't need a big building of offices to stick people in anymore. Right? We don't have to have the skyscraper where everybody drives in and gets together every day physically. And when they came to that realization, it opened up opportunities to be located somewhere else, maybe where the taxes are lower, or they could find more workers or something like that. And so I don't think that's a trend that's going to be going away. I think that businesses are less physically tied to locations now, and work from home and remote options are just far more widespread and are probably going to continue being so. For the second part of the question, how will it affect Indiana? It's really tough to say. I think that workers with greater flexibility for where they live will want to live places that they like to live, that are nice places to live, that have good quality of place. And I think that Indiana has a lot of potential there. We have a lot of things that we can offer that will attract workers that maybe don't have to go into Chicago every day. Maybe they go in once a week or something, or in some other city. And most of the time they get to work from home or the local coffee shop or something like that. And so I think it's always been important that we make Indiana a place that has a high quality of place, but it's even more important now because you're no longer physically tied to locations like Chicago, or at least you're less tied to them. And so I think that's really the challenge that Indiana faces, is how can we make this a place where we want workers to live because they want to live there, and we want it to be a place where companies want to locate because of the tax incentives, because of the amenities we offer, because of the workforce we offer, and try to capture as much as that as possible in Indiana.
My final question for you here, and I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a fun 45 minutes. So Dr. Pollak, Michael Hicks, another Hoosier economist, wrote an article a few months ago. And in the article, he said Indiana is in great trouble economically. And his reasoning was a little bit more nuanced, but important still. Essentially, his points kind of narrowed down to these three, for him, troubling kind of indicators. First, most of the growth in the state has happened in one area, Indianapolis. Most of that job growth has happened in low-wage work. And the only section of job growth in the last 20 years has been among workers without a high school diploma. Nationwide, more than 8 in 10 new jobs are to college graduates. And so he puts all these things together in an article that I read on the HeraldTimesOnline.com, and essentially says we've got some problems here. Do you agree with his assessments? And if so, what should Indiana be doing?
Yeah, I agree with what Michael outlined in that article, with the additional caveat that it's not just about educating people, but it's about getting them to stay here. I mean, if we invest a lot of money in getting people through college and then they immediately leave the state,
which is happening,
that's not accomplishing anything. Exactly, right? I mean, I think someone commented that for a long time, Indiana's faced kind of a brain drain where our best and brightest have left. Well, now we don't have that many best and brightest, and now it's the better and the brighter that are being dragged away, and that kind of goes into his point. But I do agree. Not every person needs a college degree, but a state without enough college graduated workers is not going to be able to compete with other states. And so I do agree with that. And I think that we need to put more attention into public education, not just at college level, but at K through 12 level, technical schools, all sorts of training. And it has to be paired with how do we keep people here? How do we get people to want to live in Indiana and to stay here?
Yeah, I think the Chamber of Commerce has started as well to kind of talk about some of these things as well, as they're hearing from businesses who can't fill those jobs as well. Hey, Dr. Pollak, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I'll give you the final word. Anything you want to know our listeners to know?
Just that I think we're on an economic roller coaster ride right now, and I think in another 6 months or so, hopefully things will have settled out and there'll be a little bit more leisurely trip.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again for being on the show. You can follow Dr. Pollak at Micah Pollak, Pollak on Twitter. If you'd like, you can learn a lot about the economy and things from him on Twitter and other sort of things. I want to thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week. Not on Monday. We won't have a show because of the holiday. But on Friday, we'll be back with Michigan City Council person Bryant Dabney. Be good to yourself. Be good to others. Keep listening to 96.7 The Eagle.
Thank you for joining us and voicing your opinion on this edition of Sound